He was good to cuddle with, I bet.
Yep.
Okay, I've been passed this around. Class today is a card for Seth and Addie Young. So we'll pass this around, and there's a shower today at 2. They got married a couple
Okay,
weeks
good.
ago. Go after class. Here, need a pen?
Well, it shows you.
Oh, yeah,
Write her a check.
right, yeah, I can take care of it.
Well, good morning. We'll be in Philippians 2 today. It took me a while to figure out where class was.
Yeah.
The last time I taught this class, we were meeting in the auditorium, and so I started there, and nobody was in there. And I thought, well, they either figured out who was teaching, or they moved it, and then somebody said, yeah, I think they're meeting on the other side. And so, so I went to this classroom, because it said experiencing joy in Philippians 2, and I thought, well, that's where it's supposed to be. So getting ready to start, and Dr. Sabedra kicked me out, said, no, Kyle Collins is the teacher. And so I just keep coming, and then I see my wife sitting in here. I think, well, maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. So he said, no, Kyle Collins is written down here. I said, well, Jerry Montgomery asked me to do it February 5th, so just tell me where to go. It's good to be here, and we'll be in Philippians 2 this morning. Do we have any other announcements to make? We're passing this card around for Seth and Addie Young. They got married about 2 weeks ago, and so there's a shower for them today at 2. And so that card's going around. We'll give that to, y'all help me remember, it's supposed to go back to Janet Bergner after class. Had a couple of you ask about my mother. Appreciate that. She had a mini stroke on Saturday of last week, and so Sunday I was with Dad at the hospital with her, and so she's fine, but just trying to figure out what's going on. But she kind of lost some speech there temporarily, and they metaflighted her to the city. By the time they got to the city, her speech had already returned, and was tired and a little bit slow on some processing and speech. But anyhow, she's doing well, and I appreciate your thoughts and prayers and concerns. Got some more testing coming up, so appreciate your continued prayers on that. Any other announcements before we dive in? Okay, well, we're in Philippians 2, and the text today is 12 through 18. The theme is experiencing joy, and today's specific topic is working out our salvation. And Jerry hit me up, and we kind of have a choice, at least if you are at the beginning of class selections, you have a little bit of choice as to what you take. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I got my own questions about what this passage means, and so we'll dive into that. So I was glad to take this topic to begin with, and then I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't have picked this topic. So let's begin by just reading Philippians 2, 12 through 18, and then we'll come back and kind of divide it up a little bit. So in keeping with this theme of experiencing joy, the first part of this passage, you're like, how does this really fit with joy? But then by the time we get to the end, I think we see how it ties in with the theme. Philippians 2, 12 through 18. Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you both to will and to do for his good pleasure. Do all things without complaining and disputing, that you may become blameless and harmless children of God, without fault in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding fast the word of life, so that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain or labored in vain. Yes, and if I am being poured out as a drink offering on the sacrifice and service of your faith, I am glad and rejoice with you all. For the same reason, you also be glad and rejoice with me. So, as I said, we get to the end of the passage, we see Paul talking about joy and rejoicing with each other. But the first part of this passage is a little bit tough, and the attention getter here for this lesson starts off with verse 12a, the first half of verse 12. Obeying, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence. And so it made me think of when I was in college, our coach used a saying I've heard several times since then, but this is probably the first time I'd heard it. He said, your character is who you are, how you act when nobody's looking. And that really hit home to me, so sometimes we have, kind of this persona that we are and how we act and how we talk when other people are around. And then sometimes when nobody's around, we don't always act like we should, right? Or if nobody's looking. The question here given in these notes is, what kind of driver are you? Are you like a little old lady from Pasadena? Are you just one that kind of goes with the flow of traffic? Are you a legalist in traffic? Every traffic law must be followed to the letter. Another one says, are you an executioner? If I see a cop, I execute. Or are you one of those just said, get out of my way? So I realize this is not confessional, but I'll confess something. So about a month ago, I was leaving church here, and I'm going to blame it on my wife since she's sitting here. She said, well, you hurry up and go to Walmart while I'll stay here with Brody, because Jason Rutherford was having a meeting with the youth. So you run to Walmart and pick us up. She said, just make a quick trip, hurry, go to Walmart. So I pull out of the parking lot here, and I hit Beach, and I start going east on Beach, and I'm just following with the flow of traffic. We've not been worshiping down here but a year, but we don't hardly ever go east on Beach. We just go back to the bypass and go to